Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Kavinsky's tutorials. Today I'm looking at Xequence AU keys and Xequence AU pads by 7 Systems, the developer of Xequence and Xequence 2. Unlike Xequence 2, these are audio units, so you can use them in whatever host you want. So here I'm using them in AUM. Now, there's a lot of things that I really like about these, and I've got some copies to give away, by the way. Look at the pinned comment for details of how to win if you're watching in the first few days of release. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I love the interface. Certainly, I massively prefer it to the AUM keyboard. But what I really love is the functionality. Things like, for example, being able to have double layers. But for me, most importantly, these lovely sliders over to the left, which are basically sending out MIDI messages and which can be triggered in different ways. It's one of the things that we'll look at later, and I'll show you how to set these up. But basically what these are doing is sending out MIDI CC messages to various effects apps in this chain here. And you can see I've actually written the names here. So basically here, this is sending out to the granular delay in Other Desert Cities by Audio Damage. Here, this is basically a sustain pedal effect, which I've actually set up to be on by default. But if I press it like this, we no longer have sustain. And that's the opposite of the way most people would set this up, but it's the way that I've set it up for the purposes of this video. Then here, this is triggering a comb filter, ring modulator, phaser, Gatelab, the free gating app by Audio Modern, and PaulXstretch, which is also a free app by Sonosaurus. So they're all lined up here. So we've got a few other things here as well, like Alteza, for example, the reverb by FAC, and Toneboosters multiband compressor, which I'm not actually triggering, but I'm using in the chain. Okay, let's first just have a little listen to what it can sound like. You'll notice, by the way, I've got this turned on. So what this does is give us velocity response. Hit near the top of a key and it's quiet. Unfortunately, using the mouse, I can't actually do that, but I can show you the position. So if we're hitting up around here, it's quiet. And hitting down here, it's loud. Okay. All right, so let's have a listen. So first of all, we're just going to hear the sustained piano sounds. And you can see here, I've got it in F major. Actually, the mouse is not working on clicking anything here, so I'll just use it to show you what I'm doing, but I'll actually use my finger to press. So you'll see when I'm performing, I might at times switch around between different scales and things like that. Okay, let's have a little play. Okay, so let's look at how we set this up. So if we go down to the bottom right here and click on this triangle, sorry, hamburger menu, here you can see where we set up our Midi CCs. So I'll open up a fresh instance to show you what it would be like. It's my dog you can hear walking around in the background. Okay, so when you open a fresh instance, you can see here, it's got a couple of things already set up in terms of sliders. So one is like a pitch bend, a pitch wheel. And you can see here that it's got centered and returns selected. So when it's like that, basically you move it, and when you release, it'll jump back to the center point. If you don't have return pressed, it won't snap back to that center point. If you don't have centered pressed, then it'll start from the bottom. Now here we can choose our MIDI channel and the color of these pads. And this is where we assign the CCs. So you can see that some of the most common ones are already in there. But basically, if you just want to set it up to a specific number, you just type in the, 101 or whatever here, and it'll send out that CC value. And then you've got this rename button here as well, so you can give everything your own name. So if we go back to the example I already showed you, you can see that I already gave them these names here. Here you can see the CCs that they're sending out on. I'm just sending everything on MIDI channel 1. And I've used all of these centered. To add more, we just press the plus. Now, we've also got a width setting here, so we can make the keys fatter or narrower. When enabled, sliding from one key to another will play those two keys in legato, but it won't actually do that because this is a piano sound, so when it depends on your instrument, like let's say you're playing a mono synth or something like that, then that could be useful. Let's look at the slider types. We can hide this, by the way, by pressing the CC button. And we can also choose whether we have 1 or 2 layers of keyboard over here. Okay, so let's look at these different types of buttons. So this is just your regular, this is that comb filter sound. So here, this just means you drag it along, and wherever you stop, it'll just stop there, and it'll have that value. 127 maximum, down to 0. So that's what this one does. Now this one, okay, let's say, let me put this down to 0. And then let me press this. So this one, you see, basically when I press it, it'll jump to whatever position I'm pressing at. And when I release, it will go back down to 0 again. Now, if I set a different value here, like let's say I set the max value, and then I click on this. Now, When I press on it, it'll jump down to whatever value I've pressed, but when it springs back, it'll spring back up to maximum value. Now you can see also it can show you little tips at times. So motion control, when selected, you can rotate your device to move this controller. Up to 3 controllers can be used in this mode simultaneously and will automatically be assigned to the 3 rotation axes. The current orientation at the moment of activation is used as reference. Motion control stays active even when the sidebar is closed. You know, I haven't actually even experimented with this one yet, but let's try and give it a try. Well, you know, I would need to lock my iPad position and stuff like that there, so. But you can see, as I'm moving my iPad around, that value is actually changing. So that's pretty cool. So if we go on to the next one, what we can do here actually is, let me click on this again. Let me go down, mark all hints as unseen, right? So if you've forgotten what something does, you can press this. And then when I press here, it will show me what this mode does. So controller input mode, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this one is key position control. When selected, this controller is set when a key is struck, depending on the vertical position on the key, just like velocity. So basically this one is, you know, if I press down low on a key, like I'll show you where I'm pressing with this mouse. Oh, there we go. I don't know, strange. If I'm pressing here, you can see where it is. Press up here, I'm pressing in the middle of the key, then it's playing up here. Up here we got the full value. So that's what that one does. Here, key slide control. When selected, this controller can be moved by sliding your finger up and down while touching a key. So here I'm sliding my finger up and down the key like this. I notice here that it's not actually going to the bottom. It's only going to the bottom on the lower layer. Not really sure if that's how it's supposed to behave. Okay, next one. This one combines those 2 modes. So you see it's staying there when I move down. Now this one is the one, this ribbon control is probably the one that you'll use the most. So as I said, I also like the fact that you can change your scale while you're playing. But one thing I've discussed with Alexander, the dev, is that sometimes when you're playing very fast, when you press on one of these options, like here we've got some different triad options. Here, it will only let you change if you're playing notes that are within the chord that you want to change to. So if you're just kind of playing very randomly and very fast, like I am, you might end up having to kind of hit that a few times, or you might end up having to take your fingers off very briefly while you change it. Now we've got a bunch of different scales. So we've got Western, which has some of the most common things. I noticed, by the way, it's got harmonic minor, but no harmonic major. Here we've got some different modes and things like that. And then you can see these other things, you know, jazz, Indian, some different chords here, pentatonic. Etc., etc. And we've got our keys here. And of course, we just change our octaves by pressing these. This is actually responding to the mouse. It's funny, certain iOS apps have no problem responding to mouse touches. Others can be a bit funny about it. All right, so let's take a look at the pads. So, edit was pressed here. Let me just turn that off. This is not connected. Let's see what's going on here. This is the one that's connected, okay. So you can see I'm getting different velocity there. So basically the way this one is set up is that, and you can actually see this, you can see that it's lightest in the center, and that is showing you that that's where you're getting the highest velocity. And then as we move away from the center in any direction, the velocity gets lower. Now we can also zoom in on a pad to make it full screen. So here we've just got this first pad. That's a pretty cool feature. Now edit, we can tap, when we press edit, we can tap on a pad and we can change what note it's sending out on what octave and so on. Another thing we can do in edit mode is, for example, we can drag pads around. So we can swap their positions. But here I want to keep them the way they are because it's basically mapped to exactly the way these are in Ting. Don't forget, by the way, in Ting, you've got a lot more sounds in the app itself. You got to choose, you don't get them all. But I mean, you could set up, for example, 2 instances of Ting and a couple of instances of the pads, and you know, get access to all of those sounds at the same time if you wanted. Now this is a really cool feature here, and I'll just open up another instance to show you this. Okay, so this is what it opens at on a default. Now, let me see, hang on. How do we clear these again? Well, I'm just gonna do this. Just gonna turn it down to 1 times 1. I'm going to edit here, press this, and I'm going to choose C for the value of this pad, and then press done. Because in Ting, C is what is going to trigger this first sound. This will be triggered by a C, C sharp, D, etc., etc. So it just works its way up through an octave. But Xequence Pads has a very cool feature which we can find in here. That's where the clear button is, yeah. So the clear button is in here. So that'll clear everything. That's what I should have done before, really. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we can clear there. Now, let me again make it a 3x4 keyboard. Actually, no, 4x3, right? Okay, so we got this. And what I'm going to do is click on this pad, choose C, choose done, and then I'm going to depress edit again. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click on fill. And you can see here what it does. Overwrites all pads on the current map with ascending notes, starting with the selected root note on the bottom left pad, increasing to the right and top by semitones. Okay, so let's do that. And so you see now this will be C, C sharp, D, etc., etc., etc. So for example, if we click on this and if we click edit and click on that, that should be a B. Right, exactly. So this is super nice and super time saving. So it's very easy to get exactly the kind of setup that you want here. Now, if we go back to the actual instance that I'm using to play on, you can see that what I did here was I set up these sliders to connect to the bass, mid, and treble EQ settings, well, tone settings in Ting. So let's see what it sounds like. You know, just now, I was wondering why those sounded a bit funny. You know, sometimes you have to come in and sort of make sure that actually the values that are here are in fact the values that are on the app. It's good practice to reset everything at the start of a session again. You see there's a lot less bass there. And again, you can see I've got it snapping back to the center. Mid. Okay, so the last thing that I want to look at is how we do the actual mapping of the CCs and so on in AUM. If you're a regular on my channel, you'll probably know how to do this already, but some people don't, so let's take a look at it. So I'll go back to this first instance over here. And if you remember, we set various CC out messages, set the numbers here. And so how did we assign them to those various things? So let's see, 91, for example, is the dry wet amount of that granular delay. So if I open that up and I click here, one thing is that I make sure that here I have Xequence set as a Midi source. First thing to do. Then the next thing, I find the parameter that I want to control, which in this case is mix, and I click on it and type channel 1, because if you remember, I'm sending everything on channel 1 here. And then here, just choose the CC. And again, you've got back in keys, the ability to set up any CC you want here. There's another way you can do things in AUM that again, some of you may know and some may not. It's a slightly more recent feature. So when we, again, just tap on that little MIDI control icon, if we tap on this little thing here, this pop-up will come up, tweak any parameter to show its MIDI control. So let's say, for example, I wanted to set up, I don't know, let's say pitch random. I basically just tap on that. Now, sometimes I need to do it a couple of times, and then assign here my number to it. So that's a lot easier than having to look for it in a whole list. Again, another thing, I can just type the value. I do that by double tapping on the number here, and let's just put 100. And now let's go back to, let me just depress that little thing that was flashing there. Let's go back to Xequence keys, and here add, and I click on this, and I click on this little number, type in 100. I'm not going to bother giving it a name now, but let's see what we get here. You hear some randomness to the pitch there. Now, if I put this on free, you're going to hear a lot more randomness. Let's see what that'll be like. Okay, so there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Very nice pair of apps. Really enjoy the interface. Nice functionality. Doesn't take long to learn. Lots of scales. I like these sliders. I love the fact that you've got a few different options for how to interact with them. Yeah, so great little apps. I do recommend them. And if you're entering the draw, good luck. And I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget, of course, if you haven't, to smash that like, etc., etc. I put out a couple of videos a week. So if you're into iOS music, make sure you've subscribed. Remember, when you subscribe, if you do want to get regular notifications, hit the all part of the notification bell to make sure that you get all notifications. All right, I'll see you next time. Take it easy, everyone. Good luck.